Welcome to Fact of Unseen. Hospitals never truly sleep. Even at 3 in the morning, their hallways breathe with humming lights and the faint rhythm of machines. But for the night staff in this hospital, one room was different. Room 6. Officially, it was out of service. The bed was broken, the equipment old, the door permanently locked. Yet, nurses whispered about it. They said its heart monitor sometimes came alive at night, even unplugged. Clara, a young nurse, was the first to hear it. A slow, steady beep, 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 echoed from the locked door. She entered, expecting a prank or a malfunction. The room was empty. Dust covered every surface. No patient, no movement. But the monitor glowed green, its line rising and falling like a heartbeat. Her pulse quickened. The rhythm grew faster. Then it flatlined, a long, piercing beep that seemed to echo through the empty ICU. She froze. The sheets on the bed were pressed down, shaped as if someone had just lain there, cold, damp. And then she heard it, breathing, shallow, raspy, coming from the bed. Clara bolted. The door slammed behind her. Weeks later, another nurse, Elena, faced the same temptation. Against warnings, she went in when the beeping began. The monitor lit up, wires dangling uselessly. The sheets were indented, shaped like a body, and the room smelled faintly of something sour, like decay. She stepped closer. The monitor's pulse quickened, erratic. Beep, beep, beep. Then a flat line, silence, and in the silence, a whisper. Lie down. Stay with me. Elena ran, her flashlight swinging wildly. Later, she learned the truth. Room 6 had held a man who lingered between life and death. Machines kept him alive after his mind had already left. When he died, alone, his last moments somehow imprinted themselves on the room. Elena quit weeks later, but sometimes at exactly 3 a.m., she swears she hears the faint beep, beep, beep in her apartment, growing louder, closer, until she turns on the light. Dr. Heller had finished a grueling 16-hour shift. His feet ached, his mind was foggy, and all he wanted was the warmth of his car and the quiet of home. He pressed the button for the ground floor and stepped into the elevator. At first, everything seemed normal. The lights flickered slightly, the elevator hummed, but as it descended, it passed the parking garage and kept going, lower, lower, until it stopped at the morgue. The doors slid open. A man stood inside, pale, thin, wearing a hospital gown, with eyes wide and lifeless, staring directly at Dr. Heller. Are you okay? The doctor asked. The man didn't move, didn't blink, didn't answer. A chill ran down his spine. But Dr. Heller was exhausted. He stepped in, intending to simply ride to the ground floor. The elevator lights flickered, then dimmed. When he turned to speak to the man, he was gone, vanished. The air inside felt heavier, colder, almost suffocating. The elevator descended to the ground floor, doors opening to an empty lobby. Dr. Heller's pulse raced. He insisted to security that someone had been in the elevator with him. They reviewed the footage. The tape showed him stepping in, moving his lips, speaking to no one, alone. Days later, Dr. Heller discovered something chilling. The man he had seen had died the previous night, in the very morgue where the elevator had stopped. Stories spread among the night staff. The morgue elevator occasionally collects the living, giving them a glimpse of something else. Some who enter claim to hear faint whispers or see shadows pressing against the elevator walls. Dr. Heller never rode that elevator again, but on nights when he can't sleep, he swears he hears the low hum of an elevator descending, stopping at a floor that doesn't exist. Urban explorers are drawn to abandoned hospitals, fascinated by rusted beds, cracked tiles, and graffiti-covered walls. But this psychiatric hospital was different. Locals whispered about the Night Walker, a figure seen only by those who dared enter after dark. 3 friends, cameras in hand, decided to explore at midnight. The front doors creaked as they pushed them open. Dust swirled in the beam of their flashlights. Broken beds and scattered medical files lay across the halls. The air smelled of mold and something sour, almost like decay. At first, they laughed, joking about ghosts and haunted corridors. But then they heard it. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, echoing behind them. "It's probably just the wind," one whispered. The steps grew louder, following them down the corridor. When they turned, nothing was there. Their flashlight beams swept the hallway. At the far end, a tall figure stood, motionless, dressed in a tattered patient gown, head tilted unnaturally to the side, arms hanging too long. They called out, but the figure did not move. They debated fleeing, but curiosity and fear held them in place. One friend tried to approach, and the figure's head snapped toward him. Not a natural movement, but jerky, inhuman. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered. Darkness enveloped them. The footsteps started again, faster, closer. They turned the light back on. The hallway was empty, but the sound of footsteps came from right behind them. They ran, cameras shaking, doors slammed, echoes bouncing off the walls. One of them tripped. For a split second, he saw the figure's face, pale, hollow eyes, mouth stretched in a silent scream. Outside, they gasped for air, cameras still rolling. But when they reviewed the footage later, there was a frame they couldn't explain, a pale hand, reaching toward the lens from the darkness, even though the hallway had appeared empty to them at the time. No one returned to the Nightwalker's corridor again. Locals say he still prowls the abandoned halls, waiting for someone curious or careless enough to follow. Dr. Collins had performed hundreds of surgeries, and he prided himself on his focus. The operating room was his domain, sterile, controlled, predictable. But one night, everything changed. The patient was under heavy anesthesia. Machines hummed steadily, monitors beeped in rhythm, and the staff moved quietly. Everything seemed normal, until Dr. Collins heard it, a whisper. Collins. He froze, thinking it was a mishearing. He scanned the room. The anesthesiologist and nurses continued working, unaware. He asked softly, "Did anyone hear that?" No response. The whisper came again, clearer this time. "Don't let me die, please, Doctor." Collins' hands trembled. The voice was coming from the patient, but the patient was unconscious, fully sedated, incapable of speech. A chill ran down his spine. He forced himself to continue the surgery, focusing on the task at hand. Yet the voice kept returning, repeating, growing more desperate with each passing minute. He imagined the patient's fear, alone and trapped in that strange space between life and death. During a pause in the procedure, Dr. Collins leaned close, listening. The voice whispered something new. "I can't leave.
Not yet.
Not yet." He glanced at the monitor. The heart rate was steady, but a cold dread filled the room. Every beep sounded like a countdown. Hours later, the surgery concluded. The team worked to wake the patient, but there was no response. flatline. Dr. Collins was shaken. How could he have heard a voice if the patient was fully sedated? He tried rational explanations, imagination, stress, fatigue. But every nurse on the night shift avoided discussing it. In the days after, Dr. Collins replayed the events in his mind. He imagined the patient trapped, aware, pleading. He felt a lingering presence in the operating room every time he returned. Years later, he admitted to a colleague, the whisper haunted him. Not just the memory of that night, but the certainty that the patient's soul had not truly left the room. And sometimes, when alone in his own home at night, he swears he hears it again, faint, desperate, and unmistakably human. Don't let me die. The operating room remains functional. Machines beep, surgeons work, patients recover. But for Dr. Collins, the memory of that whisper never fades. Nurse Abigail had been finishing paperwork long after most of the night staff had gone home. The hospital was quiet, almost eerily so. That's when she noticed an elderly man slowly rolling down the hallway in a wheelchair. He looked tired but peaceful, and his eyes seemed to follow her. She hurried to the front desk. "Did we discharge the patient from room 214? The clerk frowned. "There's no one in room 214. That patient passed away this morning." Abigail's heart skipped a beat. She rushed back down the hallway. The man had vanished. Confused, she checked the security footage. There it was, the wheelchair rolling down the hall, but completely empty. No man, no figure, just a lone chair gliding as if pushed by invisible hands. She asked around. A few staff whispered, "Sometimes the patients who die don't leave the hospital quietly. They linger, trapped somewhere between life and death, bound to the corridors they once knew." Abigail couldn't shake the feeling that the man had wanted to leave properly, to take one last stroll past the rooms he had known. The footage showed the chair stopping briefly at room 214, then continuing down the hall, finally disappearing into the shadows beyond the elevators. After that night, Abigail avoided the hallways after her shift, but she admits that even years later, when walking alone in a hospital, or even a quiet hallway elsewhere, she sometimes hears the soft squeak of a wheelchair rolling behind her, and she knows. Sometimes the discharged are never truly gone. The hospital continues its work. Patients arrive, are treated, and leave. But some staff believe that at night, when the lights are dim and the machines hum, the halls are full of silent, restless visitors, people who never truly left, moving silently, waiting for someone to notice them.